Sometimes the hardest part of letting someone go isn't the fact that they're gone. It's the ghost they leave behind in your mind. It's the constant replay of memories, the what-ifs, the late-night questions that make you feel like you're stuck in a dream you can't wake up from. But here's the truth. Not every dream is meant to stay with you. Some are just illusions, sweet while they lasted, but not real, not lasting, not meant to be carried into your future. When you hold on to someone who's no longer part of your life, you keep feeding energy into something that doesn't exist anymore. It's like gripping smoke. The tighter you hold, the less you actually have. To truly move forward, you have to let yourself wake up. You have to erase him like a dream that never happened, not because he didn't matter, but because you matter more. And that's what this journey is about. Not chasing closure from him, not clinging to memories, but rewriting the story so you can step into your future unburdened, stronger, and finally free. Letting go of someone begins with a decision to accept that their chapter in your life is closed. It doesn't mean what you felt wasn't real, or that the moments you shared weren't important. It means you've reached the end of that part of the story, and no amount of holding on will rewrite it. The hardest trap we fall into after heartbreak is replaying the past over and over in our minds, as if doing so could change the ending. We revisit every word, every action, every detail, hoping we'll find something that proves the story isn't really over. But the truth is, when someone chooses to leave, or when a relationship no longer serves you, the healthiest thing you can do is stop rereading that old chapter and start writing the new one. Acceptance is not about denying the emotions that come with loss. It's about giving yourself permission to feel the pain, but also permission to move forward from it. You don't erase a person by pretending they never existed. You erase them by refusing to keep investing energy into what's already gone. The moment you decide that his role in your life has ended, you give yourself space to step into what's next. Think of a book you once loved. You don't dishonor it by finishing it. You close the cover, carry the lessons, and then reach for something new. Part of what makes moving on so difficult is the way we tend to romanticize the past. We filter our memories, editing out the moments of disappointment and amplifying the good ones, convincing ourselves it was more perfect than it really was. This keeps us stuck because we're not grieving the relationship as it was. We're grieving the fantasy of what we wanted it to be. Accepting that his chapter is closed requires honesty. It means looking at the relationship as it truly was, not as you wished it to be. It means reminding yourself that if it were right, if it were truly meant to last, you wouldn't be here wondering how to let go. When you stop idealizing what's gone, you take back your power. You begin to see that just because he was a part of your story doesn't mean he was the whole story. He played his part, he taught you something about yourself, and now the page has turned. And here's the most empowering part. What comes next is completely yours to write. You're not at the mercy of his choices anymore. You're free to create something bigger, something healthier, something more aligned with who you're becoming. Accepting closure doesn't mean you won't think of him sometimes. It doesn't mean you won't feel moments of sadness or even longing. But it does mean that you stop letting those thoughts define you. You stop making them the center of your attention. You can notice them, acknowledge them, and then let them pass, just like clouds drifting across the sky. With time, they'll fade more quickly, because you'll be too busy living in the present to keep looking back. Think about it. Every day you spend rereading the past is a day you're not writing your future. Every ounce of energy you pour into what's closed is energy you're stealing from what could open. Accepting the end isn't about weakness, it's about strength. It's about trusting that the story still unfolding is more important than the one that's already finished. When you embrace that truth, you no longer fear letting go. You see that you're not losing something, you're making space. Space for peace, space for growth, space for love that actually stays. That's how you truly erase him, like a dream that never happened, not by pretending it wasn't real, but by choosing to wake up and live the life that's waiting for you beyond him. The reason many people struggle to fully let go of someone isn't because they're still in love, but because they've left emotional hooks in place that keep that person alive in their mind. These hooks are the little ties that seem harmless on the surface: checking his social media, keeping old messages, replaying songs that remind you of him, holding on to photos, or even allowing mutual friends to update you on his life. Each one is like a string tied around your heart, pulling you back every time you try to step forward. And the painful truth is, you can't erase someone if you keep feeding their presence in your world. Removing the emotional hooks is about reclaiming your energy. When you cut off those subtle connections, you stop giving him space in your mind. Think of it like cleaning out a closet. As long as you leave pieces of him in there, a shirt, a note, a gift, every time you open it, you're pulled back into the memory. But when you clear it out completely, you create space for something new. It's not about being cruel or dramatic. It's about recognizing that your peace is more important than holding onto relics of the past. Social media is one of the biggest culprits. That one simple scroll can undo weeks of progress. You might tell yourself you're just curious, but what you're really doing is reattaching the cord between you and him. Every photo, every update, every glimpse into his world keeps him alive in yours. It's not strength to keep watching, it's self-sabotage. True strength is hitting unfollow, mute, or block if you have to. It's choosing not to know what he's doing, because what he's doing no longer deserves space in your life. Then there are the mental hooks, the daydreaming, the what-if scenarios, the conversations you replay in your head. These are harder to control, but you can train your mind to let go. Every time you catch yourself drifting into a memory, you can redirect. You can remind yourself that chapter is done, and then shift your focus to something in your present, a goal, a project, a friend, an activity that makes you feel alive. It's like training a muscle. The more you practice letting go, the stronger you become. Detaching doesn't mean you didn't care. It means you've decided to stop bleeding energy into a place that gives you nothing back. Holding onto emotional hooks is like keeping an open wound. You can't heal if you keep picking at it. By removing those hooks, you allow the wound to close, and with time, you stop feeling the ache. The fear many people have is that cutting off contact will make them seem cold or heartless. But the reality is, boundaries are an act of self-respect, not cruelty. You're not punishing him, you're protecting yourself. You're choosing to honor your healing over his access, and in that choice, you begin to regain your sense of control. It's important to remember that erasing someone doesn't happen all at once. It's a process of steadily cutting away every tie until you feel light enough to move on freely. You'll know you're succeeding when his name doesn't stir the same emotion, when his image doesn't trigger the same reaction, when your days are no longer punctuated by reminders of him. That's when you'll realize that the hooks are gone, and with them, the weight you've been carrying. Removing the emotional hooks isn't easy, but it's the bridge between remembering and forgetting. Once you've crossed it, you stop being controlled by the past and start living in the present. And that's how you truly erase him, not with one grand gesture, but with a series of choices that say, "My peace matters more than his memory." When someone leaves your life, one of the most powerful steps you can take is to reframe the story you tell yourself about what happened. Because the truth is, it's not the breakup itself that hurts the most, it's the meaning you attach to it. If you tell yourself, "I wasn't good enough, I lost him, I wasn't chosen," then of course you'll feel crushed, rejected, and small. But if you shift the narrative and see him not as the one who got away, but as the one who taught you, the weight of that loss transforms into something lighter, something useful, something you can't actually grow from. Reframing is about perspective. Imagine looking at a picture through a cracked lens. Everything looks distorted, broken, and ugly. That's what happens when you keep replaying the story of him as the best thing you'll ever have. But when you change the lens, you start to see things as they really are. Instead of mourning what you think you lost, you begin to recognize what you gained. Lessons about love, about yourself, about what you truly want and what you will no longer tolerate. The story you carry in your head has the power to define your identity. If you keep telling yourself he was the one, you trap yourself in a loop of longing and regret. But if you reframe it as, he was a stepping stone to something greater, suddenly the loss isn't a punishment, it's preparation. He wasn't the end of your story. He was part of the journey that shaped you for something bigger, something healthier, something real. Reframing also helps you take back control. Because when you see yourself as the victim of his choices, you give him all the power. He becomes the one who decides your worth, your happiness, your future. But when you reframe the story, you realize his choice says more about him than it does about you. Maybe he couldn't recognize your value. Maybe he wasn't ready for the kind of love you offered. Maybe he chose comfort over growth. Whatever the reason, it reflects his limitations, not yours. And when you see it that way, you stop internalizing his rejection as your inadequacy. It's also about turning pain into wisdom. Every heartbreak leaves behind lessons, if you're willing to see them. Maybe you learned to trust your instincts more because you saw red flags you ignored. Maybe you learned what kind of treatment you'll never settle for again. Maybe you discovered how resilient you are, even when it feels like the world is falling apart. These lessons don't erase the hurt, but they give the hurt meaning. And meaning is what allows you to heal. The beauty of reframing is that it doesn't require you to forget. You don't have to erase the memories or pretend the relationship didn't happen. You simply choose to see it differently. Instead of a tragic ending, it becomes a necessary turning point. Instead of a loss, it becomes a gain in self-awareness. Instead of a story about someone walking away, it becomes a story about you finding yourself. And here's the irony, once you truly reframe, he starts to fade. Because when the story no longer holds pain, there's no emotional charge left to keep him alive in your mind. He becomes just another chapter, not the headline of your life. And that's when you realize you've already begun to erase him, not by force, but by shifting your perspective so completely that he no longer has the power to define your past or dictate your future. When someone has occupied so much of your emotional world, the most liberating thing you can do is redirect all that energy back into yourself. The time, the attention, the love, and even the obsession you once gave to him can now become fuel for building your own vision. This is where moving on truly begins, not just by removing him from your mind, but by filling your life with something so meaningful that there's no room left for him to linger. Think about how much of your energy went into him. The texts, the calls, the thoughts before bed, the way you adjusted your plans to fit his. Now imagine what happens when you take all of that energy and pour it into your goals, your passions, your friendships, your dreams. Instead of obsessing over why he didn't choose you, you start choosing yourself in ways you've never done before. You start waking up with purpose, not nostalgia. You start living in alignment with who you want to become, not who you lost. Investing in your own vision doesn't just distract you, it transforms you. Because every time you work on yourself, every time you take a step toward the life you want, you're reminding yourself that your story is still unfolding. He might have been a character in it, but he was never the ending. When you focus forward, you shift your attention away from the past, and that shift creates momentum. Momentum heals. Momentum rebuilds your confidence. Momentum turns pain into progress. Part of why breakups feel so heavy is because they leave behind a void. You used to fill your days with him, your thoughts with him, your future with him, and when that disappears, it can feel like there's nothing left. But a void is also an opportunity. It's a space waiting to be filled. And if you choose to fill it with your vision, with your passions, with things that excite you and push you, that void becomes the birthplace of your greatest growth. This is the moment to rediscover yourself, to ask, what did I put on hold while I was with him? What dreams did I silence? What parts of me did I neglect? And then bring those parts back to life. Maybe it's traveling, maybe it's starting a project, maybe it's reconnecting with people who truly value you, maybe it's pushing yourself in your career or your health. Whatever it is, it should be something that makes you feel alive and reminds you that your happiness is not dependent on anyone else. When you invest in your own vision, something incredible happens. You stop waiting for him to notice you, miss you, or regret leaving. His attention becomes irrelevant because you're too focused on what you're building. And ironically, that's often the moment people realize they become unforgettable, not because they tried to be, but because they stopped trying altogether and poured themselves into becoming the fullest version of who they are. It's easy to let heartbreak make you feel small, but the truth is, it's an invitation to expand, to take the energy of loss and channel it into creation, to stop clinging to what fell apart and start constructing what's meant to last. He may have chosen not to be part of your future, but you still have the power to design that future in a way that makes his absence meaningless. In the end, erasing him is not about suppressing your feelings or pretending he didn't matter. It's about filling your life so deeply, so purposefully, that his memory is drowned out by the sound of your own growth. When you invest in your vision, you don't just erase him, you replace him with something far more powerful, a life that belongs entirely to you. One of the most powerful ways to truly erase someone from your life is to rewrite your identity. Because, whether you realize it or not, when you were with him, you built a version of yourself that revolved around that relationship. You were the one who cared for him, the one who loved him, the one who made space for him in your world. And even after he's gone, it's easy to keep living inside that old identity, to still see yourself as the person who waits for him, who misses him, who aches for him. But the truth is, you don't have to carry that version of yourself any longer. You get to decide who you are now, and you can choose to create an identity that doesn't depend on him at all. Rewriting your identity starts with the story you tell yourself. If the story is, "I'm the person he left behind," then you'll keep living as someone abandoned. But if the story becomes, "I'm the person who is growing, who is stronger, who is discovering who she is without him," then everything changes. Your self-image is the foundation of how you show up in the world. When you shift it, you change the way you think, the way you act, and the way you attract new experiences into your life. Think about who you were before him, your passions, your quirks, your individuality. That person is still there, waiting for you to reconnect. But there's also a new version of you that exists now, one who has gone through heartbreak, one who has learned resilience, one who understands her worth in a deeper way. Rewriting your identity means embracing this stronger, wiser version of yourself. It's no longer about being the woman who needed him, it's about being the woman who thrives without him. This process is about making conscious choices in your daily life that reflect this new identity. If the old version of you would stalk his social media, the new version sets boundaries and refuses to look. If the old version would cancel her plans just in case he texted, the new version fills her calendar with people and experiences that enrich her. If the old version would let heartbreak define her, the new version uses it as fuel to create something greater. These small decisions stack up and reinforce the belief that you are not who you were in that relationship. You are someone entirely new. Identity also shapes how others see you. When you carry yourself as the woman who is stuck in the past, people sense it. But when you carry yourself as the woman who knows her worth, who invests in herself, who has her own vision, people sense that too. It radiates in your confidence, your energy, and your presence. And ironically, that's what makes you unforgettable, not because you're holding on to him, but because you've outgrown him so completely that you stand taller than ever before. This isn't about pretending the past never happened. It's about no longer letting the past define who you are. He may have been part of your story, but he doesn't get to write your identity. That's your job. You decide who you are today, who you'll be tomorrow, and what role his memory plays in that, which, ideally, is none. The most powerful erasure happens when you stop fighting to let go and instead step fully into becoming someone new. When you rewrite your identity, his presence no longer fits into the picture. He becomes irrelevant because your new self doesn't need him, doesn't miss him, doesn't even think of him. That's the freedom you're looking for, not just moving on from him, but becoming someone so whole, so self-assured, that his place in your life feels like a distant dream you've long since awakened from. The final stage of truly erasing someone isn't anger, sadness, or even the act of missing them less. It's indifference. Indifference is the cleanest, most powerful form of closure, because it means you've stripped away every ounce of emotional attachment that once tied you to him. When you're angry, you're still engaged with him. When you're sad, you're still connected to him. When you're nostalgic, you're still giving him power over your mind. But when you reach indifference, his name, his face, his memory no longer trigger any reaction in you. He becomes nothing more than a faint background detail in the larger story of your life. That's when you know you've truly erased him like a dream that never happened. Getting to this stage doesn't happen overnight. At first, you'll still feel pangs of sadness or longing, and that's natural. Healing is a process of peeling back layers. But every time you refuse to engage in old habits, checking his social media, replaying the past, entertaining what-if scenarios, you weaken the emotional hooks that keep him alive in your mind. Over time, the emotional charge fades. What once felt like a sharp wound slowly becomes a scar, and eventually, even the scar loses its sting. Indifference isn't about pretending you don't care. It's about genuinely not needing to care anymore. Indifference is the ultimate erasure because it sets you free. As long as you still react to him, whether with hurt or anger, he still occupies a piece of your energy. But when you reach the point where you no longer care what he's doing, who he's with, or how he feels, you've reclaimed your power completely. You've shifted the focus back onto yourself, your growth, your future. And in that space, you feel lighter, freer, and stronger than ever before. It's important to understand that indifference is not the same as coldness. It doesn't mean you harden your heart or stop believing in love. On the contrary, it means you've healed enough that his presence no longer dictates how open or vulnerable you can be. Indifference is a sign of emotional maturity because it means you've accepted what happened, learned from it, and released it without bitterness. You can wish him well without needing him to be part of your life. You can think of him occasionally without spiraling into pain. You can see him as a chapter that's already been written, closed, and shelved. And here's the paradox: indifference is often what makes you unforgettable to the person who left. When you stop reacting, when you stop chasing, when you stop feeding their ego by proving how much you still care, they feel the emptiness of your absence more strongly than ever. But by then, it doesn't matter to you because you've already moved on. That's the true power, not in making him regret, but in reaching a place where his regret is meaningless to your life. The freedom that comes with indifference is priceless. It allows you to open yourself up fully to new opportunities, new love, and new experiences without dragging the weight of the past behind you. You're no longer defined by being the woman he left, or the one who still thinks of him. You are simply you, whole, strong, and unshaken by his memory. In the end, indifference is the final proof that you've erased him. It's waking up one day and realizing he hasn't crossed your mind in weeks. It's hearing his name and feeling nothing. It's knowing that his story doesn't touch yours anymore. That's when you've truly erased him, like a dream that never happened. Not because you forced yourself to forget, but because you built a life so rich, so fulfilling, that forgetting became effortless. At some point, you have to stop giving energy to someone who no longer exists in your present. Erasing him like a dream that never happened isn't about pretending he never mattered. It's about choosing yourself over the pain of holding on. It's about seeing the chapter for what it was, cutting the ties that keep you stuck, reframing the story so it empowers you, pouring your energy into the life you're building, rewriting your identity without him, and finally reaching the freedom of indifference, because the truth is, his role in your story is already over. The only question now is whether you'll keep rereading that old script or step boldly into the one you're still writing. You don't heal by waiting for him to regret, or by waiting for closure from his side. You heal by waking up every day and choosing yourself. You heal by living so fully that his absence feels like nothing at all. And when that day comes, when his name no longer stirs a reaction, when his memory feels light as air, when you no longer care whether he remembers you, that's when you'll know you've erased him completely. You'll eye on his. He's not final. Ainori was just a dream, and your reality is brighter, bolder, and more beautiful without him in it.